We know how it feels. We know how it feels to think that you're on the outside looking in. We know how it feels to think your whole world's falling apart and there's no one, absolutely no one you can call. We know what it feels like to be discriminated because of our age, our gender, our race, our language, our sexual orientation. Even before we open our mouth, we are judged. We know what it feels like to not belong. And then comes this great shepherd. This great shepherd who says, you are not alone. You belong. You are called. Nothing can snatch you out of my hand. When we don't live as if this is true, we become very dysfunctional. We have all kinds of places on the spectrum. A couple of extremes are we become really shy and we become overly apologetic. Or maybe we act as if we're untouchable because you can't tell me what to do and I can do whatever I want. In either case, it's because we're afraid. We're afraid we don't belong. We're afraid our identity does not count, or we're afraid we don't even have an identity. And what happens in that is we push others away. We try to even push away God. And what we find is that we truly do belong and that we are truly connected to each other. And in that there is a strength, and in that we find purpose, and in that we find we don't have to try so hard. How much of your life and how much energy have you spent trying to please others, trying to be accepted, trying to fit in, trying not to embarrass yourself? How exhausting. And it never quite works. We never fully live up to what we think others expect of us. And here's this one who says, you belong. Listen to those words again. You are not alone. You belong. You are called. Nothing can snatch you from my hand. What does the you do in those sentences? Nothing, right? They receive the blessing. We are those sheep who can do nothing without this shepherd. I don't know about you, but I really like to work hard. I like to think I earn things. And we spend a lot of our lives earning. We earn our keep. We earn our degrees. We earn our good name in the community. We earn so many things. And here we're told, you do nothing except act like a sheep. Be who you already are. But there is solidarity in that as well. Because when we realize that we have so much in common, we realize that we're all afraid, that we've all messed up, that we've all turned our back on the shepherd, that we've all run away. And there is confidence in that, that we have more in common than not. And what we have in common mostly is the shepherd that we have great need for, and we are liberated to live as free people. Many of you saw the Facebook post that I posted this week by Mother Teresa. If we have no peace, we've forgotten we belong to each other. Think of the most unpeaceful times in your life. It's probably because we were disjointed from community. It's probably because we thought we were right and they were all wrong, or we thought everyone was out to get us, or we thought instead of being, instead of letting God be the shepherd, instead of acknowledging our need and our inadequacy as sheep, we were trying instead of being. The word belonging means secure relationship and affinity. We have such an affinity with each other because we are not God, because we are like sheep. Sheep, have you ever seen one sheep make it on their own? They can't. First of all, they need a shepherd. So you could have one sheep, but Mary had a little lamb. What does she have to do? She had to go find her, right? Sheep get lost. Sheep have been known to have heart attacks because they go in a corner when a predator is near, and even if the predator leaves, they still show fear until a shepherd comes and pulls them back into the fold. If their wool gets too wet or muddy, it can flip over, and they cannot flip themselves back, and eventually they suffocate unless a shepherd comes and flips them back. We're those sheep. We are people who find ourselves paralyzed because of fear, because of what we think we failed at. We find ourselves bogged down. We find ourselves carrying around burdens that we cannot carry alone. And then the shepherd comes and flips us over and restores us to the fold, and we find that we belong. There is a strength in belonging. Many scholars across this country were recently asked, in 7 words or less, say who you think you are in God. So I'm going to give you just a few seconds. You don't have to turn to your neighbor. You don't have to write it down and pin it up anywhere. I just ask that you think for a few seconds. If you had to answer, as scholars, 7 words or less, who are you in God's? Go. ELCA pastor Nadia Bolz-Weber was asked this question. 7 words, she said, we are who God says we are. It's not headline news, but it's true. How many labels have you taken on? How many labels have been put upon you that didn't fit? Who are you? We are who God says we are. And nothing can snatch that away from us. Nothing can remove that from us, no matter what labels put on us, no matter what shows up in our background checks. We are who God says we are. That is our essence. That is our identity. I think all of our lessons this morning point to an idea of belonging, but especially the most beloved psalm, the 23rd Psalm, and this gospel show us what it means to belong. It's about being claimed. It's about this shepherd taking care of us. And for once, we don't have to get anything right. The shepherd says, you are mine, and nothing can snatch you away from my hands. Belonging has power. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy, there's only 2 things stronger than belonging on Maslow's hierarchy: health and safety. Very next is belonging. That's powerful. That's incredible. That health, safety, and belonging are the top 3 things we need to be fully realized human beings. And this belonging has a power. And if you feel a sense of belonging, you have more happiness, you're more motivated, and you care more about yourself, taking care of your own body, and your neighbor. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. This is what we live into every day. This is our call as Christians. Over 2,000 people were asked what it feels like to belong. Here's the short list. Happy, satisfied, warm, popular, powerful, confident, special, secure, needed, loved, rooted, important, content, fulfilled, joyful, pleasant, embraced, involved, welcome, valued, comfortable, like I can be myself. I don't have to impress anyone. Accepted, not being judged, part of, admired. That's the short list. We know this to be true. We know when we live into our belongingness, I'm not sure that's a word, that we have this sense that nothing can snatch us away. That we are a part of something bigger than ourselves and we're not in charge of it. And at first that sounds scary, and ultimately it sounds liberating. We know what it feels like to belong. We know that we can be in a room with people who differ from us and we can respect each other. We know we can mess up and we're always welcome back. My parents live in the same house they lived in 52 years ago when they got married. I still drive up that half-mile driveway, and it's a safe place. I know I belong. The coffee pot is on, and we sit down at the dining room table, and it's as if nothing in my life really matters. It doesn't matter how much I messed up the past week as a pastor, as a mother, as a friend. None of that matters. I belong. It's a welcome place. We know that feeling. We've experienced that feeling, and we know it to be true. There's a great book out of Canada called Company of Others. I just love that name. If I ever renamed a church, I'd probably, or started a mission church, Company of Others. It was published in 2005, and it takes us through 5 people's lives. These 5 people all have different ways that they've been really connected socially, through family, through community. And because of that, they have a great sense of belonging and purpose. We hear about Ruth, who her family has made it possible for her to stay on the ranch in British Columbia for 70 years. This entire family makes it possible because that's where her heart is, that's her place. We hear about Rick, who's opened his apartment up to 2 other men. They all have schizophrenia and they live in community together. We hear about Dorothy, who's 45 years old and has Down syndrome. They live in a small town in Alberta, and because of her parents' modeling and dedication, this entire community makes Ruth feel accepted and like she belongs, no matter if she's in the post office, the grocery store, the church, at the communion table. This This sense of belonging is what we are about. If you look at the life of Jesus, I think the number one thing he did in his ministry was teach us about belonging. There were so many people on the outside of the society at that time. It seemed like those that had the power were the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And suddenly he says to women, come, sit at my feet, be my disciple. He says to a leper as he touches them, you belong, you are a child of God. He says to a woman caught in the act of adultery, where are those who are going to accuse you? Go live your life as one who belongs. We are called into this ministry to carry on what we already know to be true. Now maybe if you had to write an essay on what it means to belong, maybe if you had to write an article or tell a stranger what it means to belong, we couldn't do it. And yet we know. We know the voice of that shepherd. We know that sense of belonging. We know what it means to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Andy Dilliard said, how we spend our days, of course, is how we spend our lives. How different would our lives be if we spent it as one who belongs, instead of someone trying to force herself into a circle where we were never meant to be anyway. We already belong. It's already been given to us. Martin Luther would say over and over again that if we try to act as if God's mercy is dependent on our receptiveness, on our openness, on our getting it right, we're lost. We're those lost sheep who can't hear the shepherd's voice because we are trying to earn it. He said, just like we can't do good works as if God's indebted to us, the same way God says, you are mine, you belong to me. There is nothing you can do now, just go ahead and be a sheep. Go ahead and understand you're a part of this flock. Martin Luther went on in one of his great volumes, I can't tell you which one, to say faith is a God-given means whereby God-given justification is received. It says in order for salvation to be secure, it must finally be in the hands of God. How scary, how incredibly liberating that this shepherd calls us, that this shepherd says you belong, and we're called to live into that. Barry Neil Kaufman says a loud voice cannot compete with a clear voice, even if it's a whisper. It's that clear voice of the shepherd that we listen to as we extend hospitality, as we reach out to our neighbor, as we forgive a past offense, as we live as people who already belong. What does this shepherd look like? We hear about it in Ezekiel. I will feed them with good pasture, and upon the mountains of the heights of Israel shall be their pasture. There they shall lie down in good grazing land, and on fat pasture they shall feed on the mountains of Israel. I myself will be the shepherd of my sheep, and I will make them lie down, says the Lord God. I will seek the lost, I will bring back the strayed, I will bind up the crippled, and I will strengthen the weak, and the fat and the strong I will watch over, and I will feed them in justice. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Amen.